Over to you, Pritha.
Good evening and welcome to the Excite Kolkata Literary Meet. This session is presented to you by Kindlecast, a new long-form podcast platform that grew out of the revival of Kindle magazine. And this conversation is part of a series called The Soft Record, which is less interested in positions and pronouncements, but more interested in artists and writers, how they think, hesitate, notice, and then arrive at meaning. And it's a real pleasure today to be in conversation with Upamanyu Chatterjee. You know, from English August onwards, his writing has been recognizable, not because it announces its concerns, but where it decides to linger. You know, inside office spaces, in appetites, in routines, in waiting rooms, in long afternoons, places where power is exerted without drama and where characters reveal themselves not in moments of crisis, but over time. The novellas which have been gathered in the hush of the uncaring sea pretty much returns to familiar terrain, but in tighter spaces and sharper situations. Upamanyu, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. And, I want to first start by asking you about the form of the novella itself. You know, Giorgio Agamben, he used to write about threshold as a space, which is not this or that, but, a place where, vital decisions are taken. Through which vital decisions are taken. So, and I suppose novella also does that. It is poised between the openness of a novel and the compression of a short story. So, while working at such a threshold of, pressure, of length, and of consequence, what did the novella allow you to do, which perhaps a longer form might have resisted?
Well, these four long stories sort of selected their own lengths because the plots were more or less decided beforehand. I didn't have to cook them up. I'll have to explain that while people leave. Is that Malavika leaving? Yeah. This, okay. The first one, The Hush of the Uncaring Sea, is actually based on 2 paragraphs in a short story that my elder brother wrote. He spent 40 years in the Merchant Navy. These 2 paragraphs are part of a short story of his, which is set in Australia, in some bar in Australia, and this story is recounted to someone else. To get on with it, the second one, the Revenge of the Non-Vegetarian, is much shorter. Is actually a couple of lines that or maybe half a paragraph, I read in a file 1,000 years ago on an old case about a death sentence that was commuted to life imprisonment. The third story is a given in the sense it's the first case, or one of the first cases solved by India's first detective, in the sense the person who first set up India's first detective agency in Punjab. And the fourth is my understanding of what the Billy Bunter books should actually have been like. I mean, I'm just trying to be funny. I mean, in the sense that I belong to a generation that grew up on Billy Bunter, and our daughters, for instance, haven't heard of him. Who the hell is he? So I said, no, I mean, we grew up on him, and, they're all they're just dreadful books, but they're irresistible. Anyway, now they can't be found, and, you have to download the PDF. So, to get back to your question, the novella form, in this sense, the length is dictated by plot, and in this case, the plots, I didn't have to cook up anything much. So I don't think any of them could have been extended comfortably into full-length novels. And I have written earlier a collection of short stories that has some stories shorter in length. So the length is decided by what you want to do.
So let me just start to go a bit deeper into the first novella, which is The Hush of the Uncaring Sea. So when you imagine this young person, who is in the middle of the sea, there was, everything that is familiar drops away there. There's no routine, no authority, no witness. So what were you most curious about when you were imagining that solitude?
I don't think any of you are going to read these stories, but The Hush of the Uncaring Sea, based on the two paragraphs in my brother's short story, is about this, not really a stowaway, this kid who just oversleeps on a ship, and the captain just says, look, he is an unauthorized presence, throw him overboard. And that's what happens in the story. That's it. And so he spends X number of days. And this is not set in, 18th century or 17th century mid-ocean. No, it's unnamed, but it's 1970s, I think. Well, at least fictionally it happens. And the rest of it was, and he's a kid, he's 14 or 15 or 16 or something. So the rest of it is, just, I worked a bit hard on.
So let me just ask you a bit more. So for example, if you were writing about the fear of being alone in the sea suddenly, so what interested you more? The fear, or the time when the fear actually dissipated and the fear died down, and at that point in time? So what were you what kind of psyche were you more interested in writing about, or were you more curious
nothing,
about?
Not one emotion in particular, but, all of it. Here's this kid on a raft. The workmen, sailors of the ship, build on the captain's orders, build a raft for him, and I spend time to, because the merchant navy life has rarely been done in English fiction in India.
That's true.
To me, it's fascinating. But I suppose to someone like my brother who spent 40 years out at sea, he said, yeah, is that interesting? I said, yes, I want to know, as I was telling you, I want to know what, how ships come out at high tide, or do they don't come out at low tide, or, all that is fascinating. So I spend time on that, and I also spend time, therefore, on what interests me. How would a 16-year-old kid survive 3 or 4 nights out in the Bay of Bengal? And it's important that it be the Bay of Bengal, as anyone who reads the story will find out.
So do you want to, why would it especially be Bay of Bengal, and why would the port be Calcutta?
Good question. Well, I'm much more familiar with Bombay than Cal, and initially when I read the story, my brother's story, I said, oh, okay, let's just send him out of Bombay port because that's easier for me to, I don't have to pester him for details. And then I said, no, because when he is rescued, or if he is rescued, I hadn't decided that, he must be close to an Indian port, because how the hell will he, that's another, it's just too much plot if he ends up in, say, the Gulf or something. So he has to leave, say, somewhere, and then spend 3 or 4 days, and then by the time he is rescued, he should be near another Indian port, in this case, Tuticorin. So, and it was actually quite interesting because while I was doing all this, he said, Ravish, no ship that leaves Calcutta is going to, it costs too much. They are not going to stop at Tuticorin for rations or petrol or oil or something. They'll stop in, I forget what. Anyway, they'll stop in, South Africa. It was fascinating. For me, it was fascinating, that entire world. And I said, okay, let's just talk about that world.
Yeah. I also want to, talk to you about the title. The title at the very onset, it calls the sea uncaring. So, why place that word, right there at the outset and, and allow the story to live with it and test that claim?
I have written one earlier collection of short stories called The Assassination of Indira Gandhi, also worth reading. That has a story that was first called Desolation, Lust. But in the final collection, just the title's been changed to Bombay 1984. Yeah. It ends with this guy, feeling sorry for himself, out, Madras, out on the marina, recovering from an illness, feeling blue as usual. And I do remember saying that the sea roared out its unconcern. Something like that. Sorry, but I can't remember the exact phrase. And that's exactly, it's very common if you actually hear the sound of the sea. It's very sort of, impersonal and so on. And I thought that, especially for this kid out in the ocean, the last thing would, he's not likely to feel reassured at the mysterious life around him.
Yes.
So the uncaring was quite okay, I thought, as an adjective. And then at the end, at the end it works out. So.
Yes, it does work out, thankfully. From the vastness to the second story, the revenge of the non-vegetarian. So, here, it is all about the body, and hunger is not just symbolic, it is very much physical, persisting and humiliating. So, and hunger builds over time, it doesn't arrive all at once. So what interested you more as a writer? The build-up, or the slow accumulation of deprivation, or the time or that moment, when it all actually kind of tips over?
Well, actually, not everything. Everything interested me in the sense that, again, the story is about someone who kills, the servant who kills an entire family because he is certainly overpowered by the special meat, beef that has been cooked for a special occasion, I think. I did write that about 10 years ago, special occasion, and so that just, and he's the servant, so there are bits where he says that, when I get to eat my dinner at the end of the day, there's no meat left, there's only curry and stuff. Anyway, all that is put in, there's no pathos of any kind. He just butchers them all. And well, there's a revenge involved. Everything interested me. Because it's not like it's not Charles Dickens' social commentary kind of thing. It's not that, oh my God, how we treat our servants so badly. There goes a happy dog. This. But it's, and I put in, and it's necessary that it take place in the 40s and 50s because the hero is Agastya's father in an earlier avatar. So that was a nice twist, I thought, and it fit the whole thing perfectly. So there it was.
So if I were to ask you, where would you locate the center of gravity of the story?
Of
Of
non-vegetarian.
the non-vegetarian.
You mean
yes.
you mean like
know,
what's going on? What center?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, the slow build-up or the act of
No,
violence?
all of it, I think, because the act, the twist at the end you need because, in fact, when I was saying that I remember the plot, all 2 lines of it, were told me by a very senior civil servant, now dead, about something that had happened in the early 60s or 50s or something. He was very senior. And that stuck with me. God knows if it's actually true, but it sounded like a marvelous story. And then you sort of, over the decades, you sort of add flesh to it. So the center of gravity is all of it. I mean, if it's possible because if you're sending him, he gets the death sentence for killing this family. And, me being me, I can't just say that, okay, so then he goes and, is hanged. And I said, no, it doesn't happen like that in India. The damn thing takes decades. And then I plagued this good friend of ours who teaches law in Delhi. I said, okay, now he's into this death penalty business and the abolition of the death penalty. And I said, okay, just give me all the details and how long does it take and what is the procedure. And then I put all that in. So the center of gravity moves maybe with the story.
Did you worry that the reader would be torn between, understanding the hunger and recoiling from what it produces? Because I felt torn.
Well, yeah, it is violent and brutal, but it's, that's what the writer does.
As a reader, how would you have read that story?
Obviously one rereads a lot while writing, and it seemed okay. It seemed to hang together. It's nice and sort of taut. It's what I liked very much, as I told you, is that including Agastya's sense boring father as a completely different personality when young. That seemed to work very well. So I was very
So
happy.
there's this connection between English August and the character of the judge, right?
Of Madhusudan.
Of Madhusudan. So can you tell us about that?
No,
How
it's
did
just,
you
as I said, it's just
plan
that, okay, and I said we must do it in the 40s and 50s because we need that, ICS, we need all of that. We need that old world. We need, a time where faxes, don't work and people, have to type out their letters. We need that time frame. And then while working on it, and I said, oh, if you need a senior civil servant, perfect, let's just put this in. And then of course, I had to read English August, God knows how many times, just to make sure that there weren't any glitches.
Well, coming to the last story, the hapless prince, you've said quite disarmingly that it borrows almost every aspect of it from the Billy Bunter stories. So, what appealed to you about lifting a form so openly and its repetitiveness, its excesses, and its refusal to grow up, and letting it carry a story about power, about inheritance? That's a
Well, yeah, it's sort of, even when I was reading them while growing up, there is this character, for those of you who have grown up on Harry Potter instead of Billy Bunter. Hello, wow. If you bite me, asshole. So, okay, so he wants to know about Billy Bunter. This, the Billy Bunter stories, it's a fictional school. No, let it be. Where the hell is he?
He's gone.
Oh, hello. there's a, what's it called? Blackfriars? Greyfriars.
Greyfriars, yeah.
And there is an Indian prince in it, Hari Jamset Ram Singh. He's a complete cretin. Apparently, Frank Richards, the writer, was asked, and he said, "Well, all foreigners are sort of, cretins." And so this is actually his story. And I said, "Okay, he's not a cretin. What is he like?" And then the rest of it falls into place because, they're in school, so let's just do it 20 years later or 15 years later. And the brightest of the school group comes to India as an ICS officer, and he's grasping and corrupt and venal and, and very pompous and things. And so that all of it worked. And I said, "Chalo, rehne do, it's fine."
And the other...
Though I must say, it doesn't make sense at all if you don't know Billy Bunter. You say, what the
Maybe
hell
you
is
should tell
going
us
on?
a bit about it.
Well, you can't, I've said it in the acknowledgements that, it's a sort of tribute, it's my tribute. It is a kind of tribute because, otherwise why should I waste so much time and energy on Billy Bunter? It's a tribute to how much reading Billy Bunter was an enjoyable experience. But they're mindless stories. Those Billy Bunter stories are mindless. So, yeah, I suppose they are, only someone who's grown up reading Billy Bunter would like The Hapless Prince. But
So while writing it, did the familiarity of the form, did it feel freeing to you? Or because the shape was already there? Or because the form was there, it was kind of a constraint and it kept pushing back in your own story?
no, it's sort of, you write for a while and then you say, okay, enough now. It's getting a bit boring. Stop. I think the length is decided, more or less, because if you've said what you've wanted to say, then you sort of decide, yeah, okay, let me just... in The Hapless Prince, for example, I've put in all the interesting things about the lives of the Indian princes that I found in that extremely useful book, The Lives of the Indian Princes. And I said, okay, that's enough now. It's over. Let's just wind up. And it's true that, the relationship between the Indian princes and the ICS in the last few decades before independence, that relationship was extremely interesting. There were, power games, people struggling for supremacy, give me that, give me this. But see, anyway, it seemed to have worked out. So
And in the stink of the red herring, the story draws directly from a real life detective.
Yeah. In fact, that's another. Yeah, it is in the sense.
Yeah.
What? Yeah, our elder daughter's best friend in school, a long time ago. You know how it is when you're meeting. What does she do? Oh, wife, mother is civil servant. What does the father do? Oh, he runs a detective agency. What? Oh, his father runs a detective agency. Oh, her father runs a detective agency that his father set up. Oh, this is over a conversation over several years. Oh, the detective agency is the first detective agency in India. Oh. When I was ready, which is a good 20 years later, I said, let me just go and meet them. And I met them, and they were a little reluctant because thanks to the English August effect, they thought I would poke fun. I said, no, I'm just interested. How does someone in India in the late 50s or 60s, how did he just come home? He was actually an engineer he'd gone to study civil engineering, I think, in the US, Chicago. And it costs money. And then he just came back and said, I want to set up a detective agency. So his parents, as they said, freaked out. But anyway, then he got a case and then he solved it. So they gave me the skeleton. This is what he did. So I said, okay, it's in itself, it's not, it's not like an Agatha Christie or something. It's not like, wow, that's a great plot. But I fleshed it out, and that's it.
So, was the attraction the detective's confidence in solving the cases, or the moments where that confidence kind of falters?
It's a period piece, I think. I mean, I said, in fact, it was fun. I haven't spoken to my Punjabi friends yet, who hopefully who read the story, about how true it is to this, but it's set in Patiala, in the early 60s, and, winter fog and so on. And this foreign returned detective with his cigarettes and Ronson lighters and overcoat and roaming around like Dick Tracy in the lanes of Patiala. I thought I got all that right, and the story in itself is very, very simple, because again, it was a given. I couldn't just fool around with the story. I couldn't just say, okay, no, let's just put in 10 little niggers or something. You can't do all that. So the story is very simple, very straightforward. I've put in as much atmosphere as I could. I sent it to them, the parents of our daughter's friend, and they said, okay. They were relieved, I think. And so that's it. So these are the 4 stories, yeah.
So, but across, all the 4 stories, people find themselves in places that don't quite behave as expected. The sea doesn't actually behave like a refuge or a threat. Hunger doesn't just stay physical. Investigation doesn't complete neatly, or an authority doesn't necessarily come from inheritance or power. So when you're writing these things, do you deliberately seek situations which are unstable? Do you wait for is that where stories gather for you? When things stop behaving properly?
I mean, yeah, I suppose it's the reader's job to sort of extract, these kind of links, themes, connections. If you're writing the story, you just want to get it right. You just want to say that, look, this is interesting, this is believable, this is the sort of thing that just might happen. Let's just, get the concrete details right. Plot is extremely sort of necessary. It's important to get plot right before you can. What was it, that awful thing that we used to study in E.M. Foster, I think? Yes. Yes, what the novel tells a story. Something about, it's the tapeworm, he called it. It's true. You get that. And then the rest is, you just sort of put in the stuff so that it's like adding flesh.
Yes, I know, but people tell all kinds of stories and find stories in all kinds of places. People expect something out of Marcus. So where do you find your stories?
No, you can find them anywhere. You can you can get 1,000 plots in one evening, but how many of them fructify into full-length works is a different matter altogether.
So what is more difficult? Is it like the beginning of a story for you, or
no, all of it? I think you just sort of sit down to all of it. You get you get a phrase, you put it down. The next morning, it just reads like crap. So, but it's a process I enjoy. So, and I've been at it for a while. So,
people who who read you, they actually are pretty much trained to read you through English August. A lot of their reading of you comes from a foregrounding of English August, and they come to expect certain things. So, do you think that that book kind of trained the readers in a certain kind of a patience and a willingness to, wait and drift through unresolved tension? And
it's the firstborn. So, I'm always I continue to be amazed by its long life. But it's again, it's I don't know, I mean, people even now read it differently. But it's really, for me, it's about, it was then about, it still is, about, the two Indias, about the absurdity of the position of English in India, all of that. And the rest of it was just an extremely convenient ploy to get this city-bred, nice guy, but this sort of city-bred Indian out into the boondocks. Get him to spend a year. But how will he do it? And well, let's just make him a civil servant. And then you bring in all that about the civil service. And then at the end of it, just pull him out. Therefore, then the plot again became, well, what does he do in that 1 year? And as I've said at a dozen different places, which is what those who disliked the book said too, that you could have given him a famine in chapter 1 and a drought in chapter 2 and a communal riot in chapter 3. And at the end of it, he would have become Mother Teresa. So it's possible. But that's not what I wanted to do. And so here's this guy who just sort of jacks off and, smokes weed for a whole year. And that, only in retrospect, seems shocking. When I was doing it, it seemed a lot of fun.
So, after writing across such different situations and lives, what part of writing, of the writing process still feels hardest to get right?
Well, all of it, I think it's just, I just sit down every day and, fountain pen. I just sit down and, work at it. It's a long haul. It takes time.
Okay, and also, what kind of after effect do you care about the most, once the story has said everything that it needs to say?
You mean reactions? Well, it's always nice to, to meet and hear people say that they liked it. It's obviously better than hearing that, oh, this one sucks. But that's it. But, but I don't let other people see it until I'm satisfied myself. And if I'm not satisfied, I don't send it to anyone. So I just wait. But it's, as I said, it's nice. It's nice to get to hear nice things.
So in the end, just one question. At this stage of writing, one small pleasure that still makes the whole enterprise feel worthwhile to you?
Pens that work.
Well, I think I'm going to open it up to the audience, and please ask your questions, and you can raise your hand and you'll get the microphone.
Yes, please.
Hello, sir. My name is Orusharko Banerjee, and apology before I ask you my question. Sir, I'm writing a journal article on your recent novel, the novella, actually, The Hush of the Uncaring Sea. And while writing the article, I faced two very important questions, which I would like the author to answer himself. The first is that, sir, you already clarified that this Oboni...
Please don't call me sir. It's just very nervous.
The novel already talks about Oboni, who you just clarified is not a stowaway. But who have been interpreting how he has been very uncaringly, unsympathetically thrown into the ocean, and he was forced to survive on a raft. And there is also a scene where he almost faints, and he's later on rescued by the people of the Green Diva and those things. So, do you really think that this novel is not about the human interaction with the ocean, because or the sea, because the ocean or the sea still remains the last wilderness, because it is the last place where men couldn't colonize and people cannot stay without a medium like a ship or a boat or a raft?
That it's not it's not a Joseph Conrad kind of story. It's I've spent time in the story explaining that it's one of the busiest oceans bodies of water in the world, and X number of ships cross it every day, and so on. Like many other bodies of water, there's a huge amount of commerce across the Bay of Bengal. That is not what is, and he's not a sailor, so it's not as though, it's not as though he's alone against the sea. Poor guy, he's just a shopkeeper's assistant in the middle of nowhere in Howrah. So he's not equipped mentally for this ordeal. And it was so easy to kill him off. But so that the story hangs together and the title makes sense and the title sort of resonates, it was necessary to end it the way I did. In fact, that demanded a lot of plot. That's a different matter. It's up to you, since you seemed to be saying nice things about it. I hope you do. But it's up to you to see it as a struggle of this kid. But mentally, I don't think he's equipped. He wasn't ready at all. And because he's very young, it's his first experience of the sea. He's completely zonked, he's completely benumbed when he's thrown overboard. And yet, it's only when the raft is lowered into the water and he looks up and sees those familiar faces very high up, waving goodbye, that he realizes that he's in a mess. Till then, he's sort of mindless. And I'm glad that sort of works. And there's not much to say about his, I think there wasn't much more to add about his sort of inner feelings and so on. It's all there. He's just expired sea biscuits or whatever he's eating. So.
Hello, good evening. Novella is a very different type of format in compared to the novel you're familiar with, okay? Which part of the writing is quite challenging to you? The initial phase or middle or conclusion, the ending? Thank you.
No, all of it, I think. It's not as though, and in all cases, one has to write and rewrite a lot. So, you start and you read what you've written the previous day, it reads terribly, and you sort of change, and there's a lot of cancellation and cutting and scratching going on all the time. But there is a moment when you feel that, as I said, you feel that, okay, you've done what you could. It's time now to wrap up, And if it's a novella, it's perhaps, and a short story, it's perhaps, more important to... No, even a novel needs this kind of a neat end. But they're all important. It's true that the middle portions tend to sag, but I try very hard to avoid that.
Are there any more questions? Oh, yeah, there is one more. Yeah, that's the last question we can take. Yeah.
Good evening. I don't know what to call you if I don't call you sir, but I thoroughly enjoyed reading your book. I just wanted to ask you, do you feel that that the world is absurd? Is that what you're trying to say in most of your stories?
I'm not trying to say anything. But yeah, the world is pretty, it's pretty horrible. Yeah, that's true, but it's all you have. So, but it's not a sort of, it's not a position that I start from. It's, but it gets a bit obvious by the time you finish that. Absurd is maybe a kind, it's a pretty horrible place. Yeah.
So because even in the Hush of the Uncaring Sea, you make a great case for the captain also. I was almost convinced of his point of view, and then I was convinced about the opposite point of view.
That's my my brother, the merchant navy captain, who said, "Listen, you cannot, just have you cannot weep for this kid whom you've thrown into the middle of the ocean. His presence is completely unauthorized. The captain will lose his job. You know, he made it very, very clear that the twist is, it's not really a twist. I mean, in the sense that Central European captains, depending on where you recruit them, are apparently cheaper than, you know, recruitment elsewhere. So, and it was useful to make him a foreigner. And then, because I said, look, we don't want this anti-foreigner thing. So so the good captain is also a foreigner. But, you know, that's just a matter of detail. The captain's point of view is, I needed to put that in. I mean, I couldn't just say, ha-ha, you know, it couldn't just be some kind of pirate story of the 19th century, you know.
Well, I think that was all the time we had for the questions. Well, thank you, Upamanyu. I think it's a good place to stop. I think there's a hush, you know, where the writer has stopped speaking, but something still lingers in the air for us to think about. Thank you so much. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you.